The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nick Fantasy. The recommended customers play just $5. Get $75 bonus funds when you sign up with the promo code SGPN. And welcome everyone to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Currently Sunday, January 4th, around 1:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm Rosso Show once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the first episode of 2026. We have two events to talk about. We have Brisbane, we have Hong Kong. So we're going to talk about those in a few minutes. Yes, I am aware that matches start in a little while, so apologies if you are going to be getting a little bit of different prices for futures, but I had some free time, decided to record. Should not impact the lock and dog at all, should barely impact the outrights in general, but wanted to mention that technically the matches do start in a bit. So apologies if you watch this and the future markets are down temporarily, but when they come back up, you should not see much of a difference. But either way, wanted to mention that in the first place to apologize for the actual schedule. But to be honest, not going to be available much of tomorrow. So I found some free time. We had some lines on futures and decided to pull the trigger and to record an episode. So before we get into any of the actual recap of the last episode and the preview of Brisbane and Hong Kong, a reminder that you can check out all of our picks and podcasts for SGPN in one easy location. SGPN app, free to download in the App Store. So once again, just type in SGPN, download the app for free to get access to all of our picks and podcasts in one easy location. Plus, a reminder, you can also check out the Tennis Gambling Podcast on YouTube. Check it out on Spotify or Apple. Like and subscribe on YouTube, help the channel grow. Also, once again, rate and review on Spotify or Apple if you want audio only. Plus, a reminder, we have some nice merchandise on the SGPN merch store. We have a lot of tennis merch, sweatshirts, t-shirts, mugs, high quality, very affordable. Think you'll like the options. Plus, we have some other stuff. For example, this SGP helmet, which you might find pretty cool. Besides that, most shows have merch. So if you want to check it out, think you'll like the options we have. Just an option there. Check out the SGPN merch store too. So starting off with the recap of what happened last episode, which we did for the title match of the Next Gen Finals. And unfortunately for the lock and dog, not very good, but we did win the outright, so it could have been worse. For the lock, picked up a loss. We had the over 24.5 games in the Tien and blocks match. Didn't work as Tien killed him, so it didn't work out there. And for the dog, we took a gamble, but I still have no regrets about it. We faded Tien serving-wise in the first set. Didn't work out as blocks did not break in the first set, and that was plus 125 for him to do so. Either way, though, did lose the lock and dog. Blocks undefeated in the entire event. We did think that Tien would win. Thought blocks would make it close. He did not. He got buried and picked up a loss there. But we did give out an outright on Tien to win the event at plus 110. That got there, so can't complain. We did sweep the outrights. We did win the group winner for both groups in the group stage. Then we also did win the outright for Tien. So once again, plus 110, not bad. I mean, we did win the outrights, but unfortunately the lock and dog were not very good. So it is what it is, but I'll try to bounce back here for Brisbane and Hong Kong. But before we get into any of those two tournaments, do want to briefly touch upon the elephant in the room, which some people might be calling a stain on tennis for the early portion of 2026. The battle of the sexes, because we did have an exhibition match. We did have Kyrgios taking on Sabalenka, and it was an ass-kicking. So for my actual thoughts on the battle of sexes, so first of all, people forgot about this. There was a battle of sexes match that happened in 2023 between Andreeva and Durant. Now, that was actually a pretty funny story if you want the background there. I'll give it to you quickly. So Andreeva was supposed to play against Vekic in the final of an event, and Vekic got injured. Vekic had to quit. So the organizers said, we sold all these tickets for the final. We got to give the fans something to watch. So they asked Kostyuk to play against Andreeva, and Kostyuk being Ukrainian and Andreeva being Russian, it didn't work out. Kostyuk decided, you know what, I don't want to play against a Russian, get me out of here. And she turned down the offer. So the tournament organizers said, you know what, you're playing a guy. We don't have anybody else for you. You're going to play against a guy. They found somebody who was ranked 1,145th in the world, and Andreeva lost in straight sets. So that was the last time we had a battle of sexes match. People forgot about it. It wasn't an exhibition format. It was, as far as I know, real tennis rules. and Duran won in straight sets. So that was the first time we had a male versus a female in a singles match in about 3 years, and it went the way that he thought it was going to go. Kyrgios kicked her ass. Kyrgios was a favorite going into the match, about minus 600 on offshore, so it was pretty expected that he was going to win, and Sabalenka won 6 games. So not exactly a great look for the actual event in itself. I'll dive into a couple of takeaways. I wrote them down just to make sure I didn't forget anything. But the match itself, I think people thought going in Kyrgios was going to win, and he did, as Sabalenka, number 1 ranked in the world, got her ass kicked. And that was kind of how the match went. So first of all, did I enjoy the spectacle? No. I think all male versus female matches in tennis are basically wastes of time on the singles side. But either way, besides, once again, Billie Jean King beating Riggs that one time, it has been very, very male-dominated in these Battle of Sexes matches, and it was no different when Sabalenka did lose to Kyrgios. Now, moving on to the bigger story, which is, once again, the stain on the tennis landscape. What a really bad day for women's equality in sports. Yeah, not good. Sabalenka, who we know, once again, number 1 in the world, multiple Grand Slams, they tried to make it even, I'd say, more absurd by giving Kyrgios an advantage by changing the court dimensions. They kept Kyrgios's court side the same. They made Sabalenka's court side smaller to make it harder for Kyrgios. So there were no changeovers in this match. Both players stayed on the same side for the entire match, and they made Kyrgios's dimensions once again bigger than Sabalenka's on their side of their court, to make it even easier for Sabalenka, and it still didn't matter. So once again, just a disaster for women's equality in sports. And you saw Kyrgios, who, for the record, I know made a Wimbledon final years ago, solid overall player in general. He hasn't been healthy in about 2-3 years, so it wasn't like you were going in facing off against a top 20 player. Kyrgios is ranked up there at this point because of injury. Did he look good? No, not really. Kyrgios could barely move, and he still won. It looked like he was out of shape. It looked like he was really not getting much zip on the forehand and backhand, etc., and Kyrgios still beat her. So if you were interested in seeing a day where women can prove they could beat men in sports, keep waiting, because that was not what you wanted to see. If you were interested in the bigger picture narrative, it was a disaster, and people have been pretty much roasting Sabalenka ever since for agreeing to this circus and for making women look bad in sports. But it was a nice paycheck for her. I don't really feel bad at all about, Sabalenka needing to apologize or anything. She played, she lost, and we saw a male player who, at this point, his career is basically washed at this point, beat the number 1 ranked women's player in the world. So there you go. Not a great day for women's equality in sports. Also wanted to mention, for the actual format itself, there was one unique wrinkle. Besides the court dimensions being different for Kyrgios and for Sabalenka, they had no actual faults. Any fault of serve was a double fault. So because of that, you saw both players really not go for any big serves at all. Sabalenka tried one, and she double faulted by missing the first serve. Both players were serving very lightly. Sabalenka was, I want to say, a full foot behind the baseline while she was serving almost every time. And you could argue that it was a kind of a test subject, because this has been brought up to make tennis faster by other people, to remove faulting, try to make it go faster and see what happens. I think it's a really dumb idea. I think you need faulting. Once again, Kyrgios only lost 6 games to Sabalenka, and they completely just neutered his first serve. So it was even worse. But Sabalenka, in exchange, could not serve with her first serve either. Just keep the damn faulting system. This isn't complicated. If you want to change it so that way nobody can ever ace anybody, watch pickleball. What do you want me to tell you? I think at the end of the day, tennis is the way that it should be. If you want to make it go faster, you added the clock dimensions to it, the time clock. They did a pretty good job of making the individual break in between points shorter. But removing the actual, in my opinion, integrity of the sport by removing faults as a whole, I think is absurd. And I thought that for the actual match itself, it was really painful to watch both players struggle to hold serve constantly. I believe you had 5 straight breaks of serve in the first set because you can't actually try to serve hard on your first serves, and I thought it was a disaster early on. Eventually, both players kind of settled in, mainly Kyrgios holding serve, but both players just not having the ability to actually hit fast first serves, or at least attempt to hit fast first serves, I think is a really dumb idea. And if you thought women's tennis had a bunch of people that couldn't serve already, wait until they remove first serves, because you're going to see nobody holding ever. It's a disastrous idea. Don't do it. Keep it the way it is. Keep tennis the way it is and move on. But that was one interesting wrinkle they threw in there. It wasn't even like previous Battle of Sexes matches where they removed the male first serve, but they let the female player keep her first serve. Both players agreed to just not have any faults at all. And I thought it was a really, really bad component of the match. Please, if you're listening to this for future real tennis matches, do not touch the faulting system. It is fine the way it is. Please leave it alone. Anyway, before we get into the actual breakdown of Brisbane and Hong Kong, a reminder that we're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Kalshi. So if you want to check out real money prediction markets available in all 50 states, check out Kalshi, because you can trade a ton of markets. You can trade the NFL, college football, college basketball, NBA, NHL, and more. If you wanted to have action on tennis, Battle of Sexes stuff, I'm sure they had that too. Plus, you can also trade props like first touchdowns. Besides sports, they have a ton of other markets, including politics, entertainment, and even weather. And a reminder, new customers get a great deal when they sign up, courtesy of us. Get $20 if you use our code SGPN at sign up. That's Kalshi, Kalshi, promo code SGPN for a free $20 at sign up. We're also brought to you by Arctic Fantasy. So if you like pick 'em entries, chance to win 5,000 times your entry, pick higher or lower on player stats. They also have you covered for the holiday season with, once again, Underdog Unwrapped. Unwrap a ton of promos throughout the holidays, so hopefully you capitalized on that promo. And a reminder, new offer for new customers, play just $5, get $75 bonus funds when you sign up with the promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gaming Podcast. Finished going through the recap of the Next Gen Finals and the Battle of Sexes circus, whatever that was. Time to move on into the actual start of the ATP calendar. So we're going to get into Brisbane and Hong Kong. Have to point out, though, there are no quarter odds, so apologies there. We only have the outrights to win the event, so either way, the episode might be a bit shorter than most other outright episodes, but we're still going to get into the picks to win the tournament. Starting off in Brisbane, recent winners, you saw Lehecka beat Opelka last year. Very underwhelming final. Opelka retired midway through the first set. It was a massive waste of time, but a reminder, Opelka did make a dream run and did beat Djokovic in this event last year in straight sets. So nice job by Opelka reaching, but he got injured and had to quit. Dimitrov beat Rune, ended his massive drought the year prior as he won the final that year. Nishikori beat Medvedev, and Kyrgios did beat Harrison. But the point is, you have seen a couple of weird final matches in the past. I mean, Nishikori versus Medvedev makes sense based on them being in their prime at that point. But Harrison making a final, Dimitrov, Rune makes sense, but Dimitrov had not actually won a title in an eternity. So that was definitely a nice storyline. And Opelka making an ATP final was kind of weird and unexpected, but still. Point is, Brisbane plays pretty quick. So if you want to see good serves perform well, it's not the end-all, be-all. I mean, Lehecka has a good serve. Dimitrov has a pretty good first serve. Medvedev does too. Kyrgios, we know, does as well. So a good serve helps here. Not exactly a deal-breaker, but once again, good serving can be, I'd say, a very important component early in the event as the rust wears off. People's return games might look pretty ugly early on as they readjust their timing. There's a difference between playing exhibition or practice compared to real matches. So keep an eye out for that. You might see more holding early on. We'll see what happens, but either way, a pretty interesting collection of winners and finalists over the last couple of years. But once again, we have no quarter odds. So moving on to the outrights to actually win the event. Now, you see Medvedev at 375 as the favorite. Lehecka is at 750, defending champion. Fonseca is at 8-1, but about an hour ago, he dropped out. So Fonseca, who was 8-1, do not bet him. Sportsbooks have not adjusted yet. he will not be playing. So Fonseca will be withdrawn from the event. Tien at 850, fresh off of the Next Gen Finals win. Tommy Paul, back from injury. He has not played since the U.S. Open. Played an exhibition against Kyrgios, but nothing, once again, I'd say, fully official since the U.S. Open, where he lost to Bublik in 5. But either way, he's 11-1. Fokina looking for his first ever title, still at 12-1. Shapo at 14-1. Korda at 16-1. Tiafoe 16-1. That's one line that might change. Tiafoe does play shortly, so once again, apologies if you wanted to bet Tiafoe. Spoiler, since I'm sure a lot of loyal listeners to the program know already, I did not take Tiafoe to win the event, so not a concern there. But if you wanted to bet Tiafoe, then I can't contribute to that, but you missed the window at 16-1. Dimitrov at 18-1. How healthy is he? We don't know. We haven't seen him since he got injured in Wimbledon against Sinner, so we'll see what happens, but he's at 18-1. Humbert is at 20-1. Perricard 20-1. Nori 22-1. Nakashima 25-1. Vatra 25-1. Makic 28-1. Mickelson 33-1. Opelka 33-1. Popperin 33-1. Kovacevic 50-1. Kyrgios 50-1. You kind of get the point. So, look, at the end of the day, you have some talent. I'd say common theme here with Brisbane and with Hong Kong. There are some pretty talented players at the top, so it wouldn't shock me if this went pretty chalky for the first event, but we did see some weird finals last year. I believe Mueller won last year in Hong Kong. So who knows? I mean, it's early in the year. You might see people with rust. We'll see how they look. But there's definitely talent. Now, Fonseca dropping out does remove a little bit of that talent, but do I see a serious long shot of like 50-1 winning? No, I don't. Now, based on the injury news, with Fonseca dropping out, it does affect the price of Opelka at 33-1, who I don't think is going to win. But the fact is, he did make a final last year in this event, and 33-1 definitely does not adjust for the lucky loser that Opelka is going to have to play in the first round. So if you want some CLV guaranteed, take Opelka now, because 33-1 is not going to be there once these sports books adjust the pricing with Fonseca, who is, I think, minus 230 in that first round match dropping out. But for the actual path of the favorites here, Medvedev's path is manageable. I mean, plays Fucsovics in the first round. Fucsovics, when healthy, can be tricky. Medvedev, I know, played an exhibition recently where he lost one set to, I forgot what the ranking was, but it wasn't good. But Medvedev played one set against Suresh, who ranks 523rd in the world, and he lost 6-4 in the World Tennis League in one random set. Beat Chapo before that, lost a set to Monfils, so I don't know what to expect from Medvedev. I know that he did end up winning a title at the end of last year, switched coaches, he looked better. But during that World Tennis League thing, he didn't look good, so I'm going to pass on Medvedev. The draw's not that bad. I mean, Fucsovics can be tricky. Tiafoe would be the hypothetical second-round match unless Vukic beats him. But I think Medvedev would beat Tiafoe. Who knows, though? Could be a weird match. And they're in the same section as Opelka. Opelka did beat Medvedev last year. I believe that was on grass. But Medvedev's path's not terrible, not great, but with his performance in the World Tennis League, losing a set to Monfils and to Suresh, I'm good. I will pass on Medvedev there as the tournament favorite. I'll go elsewhere. So for the other guys, Rublev, no, sorry, not Rublev. He's in Hong Kong. Apologies. Leheshka at 750. I think his draw's okay. It's a bit tricky. Has Makic in the first round, who I know has some injury issues, but Makic in general is a solid top 20, top 30 caliber player. Not a great draw for the first round. Then Vatrot or Korda in the second round. Not a great draw either. I know Korda's never healthy, but when he is, still a solid player. Won a 500 title a couple of years ago. And that's the first two rounds. And then the final section there in his quarter would be Tien. Not a great draw for Leheshka. I wanted to consider Leheshka for the event again, but I didn't like the draw at all. So for 750, I wanted a bit of a better price for what I think is an underrated gauntlet for the defending champion. So I'm going to pass on Leheshka as well. Fonseca dropped out. That does bring me to my first choice. I will take Tien at 850. Yes, I know he didn't look dominant early on in the group stage of the Next Gen Finals. As the event went on, he got a lot better. Blocks had not dropped a set in the entire event, and Tien buried him 3-0. He looked good. He eventually accomplished the main goal, winning the title. And we know, in general, he's a very solid hardcore player. Now, for the actual path, he's in the same quarter as that death section between Leheshka, Makic, Vacherat, and Korda, but he's on the other side. So once again, he gets to avoid most of those guys with the exception of one. Has Carabelli in the first round. It's actually going to be taking place in a couple of hours. This is the only outright that I have that will be directly impacted price-wise because Tien could, in theory, lose, and at that point, I lose an outright immediately before most of you watch the actual match, or actually watch the episode, I mean. Will he lose to Carabelli? No. Carabelli stinks on hard court. Tien should kill him. But either way, point is that price should drop once he ends up winning that matchup. But he has Mickelson, most likely, in the second round, and then whatever happens in the Leheshka, Makic, Vacherat, Korda section. Either way, though, for the quarter itself, I like the draw for Tien by comparison. Think that it'll look sharp. In the same section or half as Medvedev, we know Tien has had success against Medvedev, so not exactly scared on Tien's behalf. I think Tien could handle Medvedev, and I do think you might end up seeing another war between them because every match they play against each other is a war. So I think Tien at 850 is a good price there for the draw, and the fact that he's been good against Medvedev in the past. So I like that price there. Then we're going to open the door to a bit of uncertainty, but I like the price. Tommy Paul at 11-1. Now, I said before, he has not played an ATP match since the US Open, played an exhibition match against Kyrgios. He's rehabbing some injuries that he had from last year. He also got engaged, so congratulations to him. But the point is, I think 11-1 is a bit rich for a guy whose upside, I'd say in this field, would have him closer to, in my opinion, like 6-7-1 if he was fully healthy. So we'll see how he looks, but I think 11-1 is a bit too large of a price for me to pass on. Now, for the actual draw itself, not terrible. Has Perricard in the first round. I know, once again, Paul hasn't played for a bit, but Perricard, we know, is an abysmal rallier. So we'll see what happens. The match could be close, but I do think that Paul's rally tolerance should just wear Perricard down over time. But I do think that, once again, Paul's draw is okay. Perricard, he's favored against decent-sized favorite Walton, or a qualifier in the second round. Same section as Norrie, Humbert, Kyrgios, and Kovacevic. I'll mention Kyrgios later in the show. But either way, point is, I think it's a pretty decent draw. Bottom half, the main seeded guy is Fokina, who plays Nakashima in the first round. Not easy. Popyrin, potentially in the second round. In Australia, not easy. And then you have Dimitrov and Chapo in that bottom quarter. So not exactly the easiest section for Fokina. But you can make an argument whoever gets out of the third quarter has a decent path to the final, and I do think that's going to open the door for some possibilities. I'll go for Paul at 11-1. I think it's a pretty decent attempt at finding value for a guy who, when healthy, is a top 15, top 20 caliber player whose fitness tends to be very solid. He should handle the conditions in Australia well. The issue is how rusty will he be early on. I'm hoping Perricard's lack of rallying skills will help Paul, I'd say once again, back into some comfort over the course of a 2 or 3 set match. But 11-1, I think, has some value, and I'll go for that as my second choice for the event. My third choice will be the same quarter. I am going to skip the fourth quarter entirely. Very tough. I think that you can make an argument. Dimitrov, we really don't know about, but Popyrin can maybe make a run. Who knows? But I do think that third quarter is appealing. Now, Norrie and Humbert is the first matchup there in the first round, but I think Humbert is slightly better than Norrie. It's going to be a fun matchup. Two lefties who are pretty good on hard court. Could go either way, so there is a chance this loses in the first round. But I think, of course, Kyrgios and Kovacevic have no chance of actually winning the event. Kyrgios, watching him against Sabalenka, looked at about 40 to 50%. Kovacevic has not really been that good lately. I know he made a final or two last year, but that was pretty early on in the year. He has not been very good lately, so I do think whoever wins the Humbert-Norrie match should get a pretty easy path into the quarterfinals, and I do think if I am wrong and Paul ends up losing, Perricard's on the other end, or if even Paul does end up winning, if he's not at 100%, I think Humbert or Norrie, in theory, could definitely beat Paul with the uncertainty involving his conditioning and his actual fitness. So I'll go for Humbert, who I think is a solid player. I think he has more upside than Norrie, so I do think 22-1 makes sense for value. But that fourth quarter is an absolute gauntlet, so I'll ignore the fourth quarter entirely. Give me some flyers for the actual third quarter, and we'll call it a day. So once again, I'm going to go with 3 outright picks. We have no actual quarters here for Brisbane. Apologies. My outright picks once again will be Tien at 850 as my favorite choice. You have Paul at 11-1, more of a flyer, but I do think the price is large. If he's fit, it's a good deal, so I'll take it. And we'll go for Humbert at 22-1 in case the Paul flyer ends up not working out and Humbert has a good path. We know the skill set's there on hard court. I think he's a solid overall hard court player. Was pretty bad for the last couple of months last year, but I do think 22-1 for this draw is decent if he gets past Nori. I'll take it. Then the upside's there at 22-1. So moving on, check out the comment section, by the way. I see Uneducated stopping by, Wipeout stopping by. I see Ghost stopping by. So shout out to all of you guys in the comment section. Apologies, I did not mention anything for the United Cup. I know that Fritz got hurt. I know that Baez beat Fritz. But maybe I'll save that for the next episode. But I want to talk about Battle of Sexes instead. And I didn't want a 15, 20-minute intro. So, yes, I did notice that Rude did end up burying De Minaur. I did notice that, but I didn't mention it. I'll save my United Cup thoughts for the next episode. Anyway, moving on to the next event. We have Hong Kong. So, for this one, looking at the actual odds here, Musetti is the favorite at 3-1. Rublev is a former champion. He's 4-1. Bublik's at 550. Kashanov's at 10-1. Mueller's at 16-1. You have Diallo at 16-1. You have Sonego 18-1. You have Yibing, who's actually healthy for now, at 22-1. Morozin 22-1. You have Kekmanovic at 22-1. Cilic at 22-1. Borges 22-1. Giron 25-1. Dzanchuk 28-1. Sheng 28-1. Royer, who was pretty good last year, made a final. He's at 33-1. Echeverry 33-1. Manrino 40-1. And you kind of get the point. If you want to go for the local Hong Kong guy, you have Wang at 50-1. So, got to mention, by the way, I did skip it, the recent winners. Not much history in the event. There was a layoff, so there was a bit of a gap there. So I wasn't going to mention what happened back in like 2003. But Mueller ended up beating Nishikori in the final last year. Mueller, I believe, lost the first set in every match, and he won the event. So definitely not expected. Nishikori as well, who ended up making the final. But either way, Mueller ended up making a very good run and ended up winning the entire thing. And the year before that, Rublev did beat Rusevori. So for the actual, once again, picks here, there's a lot of talent at the top. Now, you have Musetti, who we know had a couple of good hard court runs, did lose the heartbreaker to Tabilo in the final last year. But the point is, Musetti looked very good on hard court compared to previous years, had a good run in the U.S. Open, but he's had a hard time finishing the job when it comes to winning these hard court titles. But I did see an interview with Musetti about a week ago, and he said that he was trying to adjust his game slightly. He's trying to be more aggressive, which I do like to hear. I know Musetti is a great defensive tennis player. I think he's the best defensive lobber of all time. But either way, point is, I do think Musetti, I'd say, settles a bit much way behind the baseline, and it does feel like he lets his opponent dictate as he tries to be a counterpuncher, which has worked for him, obviously. But I do think adding some aggression to his game can be beneficial, and I do think we'll see how it works out. There might be a work in progress there, but I do like the actual desire by Musetti to improve his game, and I do think that stylistically, and I'd say once again, psychologically, being a bit more aggressive might have some benefits for him. So I do think that he could be intriguing for the actual upcoming season. We'll see how that goes, but I do like hearing Musetti address a flaw in his game, and he says he's been working on it. So we'll see how that works out. But should he be the favorite in the event? I didn't say that, but his draw is very nice. So he has a bye in the first round, Echeverry or Royer. Royer can maybe be tricky, but I think Musetti should beat him either way. Same half as Diallo. Diallo had a decent run midseason last year, won a title on grass, beating Bergs in the final. But Diallo, after that, really didn't do much, and I do think that Musetti is the better player. So I think Musetti has a pretty decent draw into the quarters. The opponent in the quarters might be Rublev. I know Rublev won the title here a couple of years ago, but my thoughts on Rublev are pretty well known at this point. I think all of us agree. He's a head case. I can't trust him, so I will not take Rublev. But since I'm not going to take Rublev, same half as Cilic. We'll see how healthy Cilic is. If Yibing's healthy, maybe he could even beat Rublev. Who knows? But I do think that for the actual quotes that I heard from Musetti and for the draw itself, I actually like him in this event. I know 3-1's a bit cheap for a guy who has not really had many, if any, hardcore titles in his resume. But 3-1, I think, is not bad for a guy who I think clearly is the best player in this half. I know Rublev can beat Musetti if he has his A game, but how often does he actually have his A game? Not often enough. So give me Musetti at 3-1 as my first choice. But I was saying before, in Brisbane, a bit more so in Hong Kong, this feels a bit top-heavy for the event. Yes, I do know Rusevori made the final. You had Nishikori and Mueller in the final last year. I get all that. But Musetti, Rublev, Bublik, Kashanov, like, there's some pretty good talent there. It would not shock me if one of those four won the event. It kind of opens up after that, as Mueller is 16-1 defending champion. But there's a chance one guy catches fire, and you end up seeing, for example, I'm not saying he's going to, but if Cilic starts serving very well, could he make a deep run? Sure. But I went pretty chalky for the actual event. I think that these guys are simply put better than the rest of the field. And I actually like the draw for these guys. So I skipped Rublev because I don't trust him enough, but his draw is not that bad. I'm going to go Bublik at 550, who had a great season last year, the best season of his career, fringe top 10 guy, and I think 550 is a pretty good price. Now, the concern is, when is regression going to hit? Is this the new Bublik fully, or is this a one-off and he's going to regress back to being a head case? We'll see what happens, but the draw in itself is pretty good. As a buy, then to Zandschulp in the second round. Then you're looking at the same section as Sonego, who we know can be a head case. Shang is a solid player. He's injured all the time. We'll see how healthy he is. Point is, though, Bublik's draw is not that bad. I do think, based on his actual skill, if you were guaranteed to get the same form that we got from last year, I would argue Bublik should be the favorite to win the event. So I'll go Bublik at 550. We know the serve's good. The variety's there. He finally seemed to get his head on straight, and I do think that Bublik, if he plays anywhere near the same way that he played last year, especially in the back half, I think 550 is a good deal. So I'll go for Bublik here at 550. I like the draw. I know Zandschulp can sneak up on people. I know Shang is good. Sonego's got talent, but he never is consistent enough for me to worry about him. I think the quarter is definitely there for the taking, and I think Bublik should take it. So I do like the draw there. But since I am skipping Rublev, I did end up going with the other favorite. I took Kashanov. Kashanov, I know, did not have a good season last year. He's still a solid overall player on hard court. Good serve, good forehand. I know that his shot selection can be pretty repetitive. He never comes forward. He never uses drop shots. He's going to stand behind the baseline and make it work. But the point is, I think 10-1 is a good price. The draw is nice. He has a bye, then a matchup against a qualifier guaranteed in the second round. So I like that. Mueller won the title last year, but he could lose to Kecmanovic. You have Giron in there. It's a very nice quarter for Kashanov. I don't have quarter odds available, but I would take Kashanov to win that quarter. It's open, it's nice, and I think Kashanov is a player who should be motivated after having a pretty bad 2025. So I think that Kashanov at 10-1 is a good price for a solid hardcore player with upside, and most importantly, a solid draw. Would he beat Bublik? I don't know if he would, but he can, and I think 10-1 is a good price. So I went chalky. I took 3 of the 4 favorites for the event, and I ignored all outright long shots here. So not interested. Cilic, 22-1. Look, if he was healthy, guaranteed, then maybe I consider it, but that is a massive question mark at this point in his career. Not interested. If Yibing finds form, maybe, but he's never healthy. Like, Sonego's talented enough. Do I trust him to actually keep his composure for the entire event? No. So you have a bunch of guys here with upside, but can flame out easily. So I'm not going to bother with those guys. But you're looking at what I think are a pretty solid collection of favorites in each quarter. If this turned into a full-on chalk fest here, and you had Musetti against Rublev, and you had Kashanov against Bublik in the semifinals, that would not surprise me. So I'll go for a relative chalk. I see Sashi mentioning that Jari did make the semis here at 28-1. Look, I get the fact that Jari might have some value at 28-1. At the same point, though, let me actually just see Jari. Sorry, give me a second. Let me just make sure you're talking about which event you're specifically talking about here. I don't even see Jari listed. So Seems value is ceiling. Yeah, Sashi, are you sure that Jari's actually in the event? Because I don't see him listed at all. So I don't know if he dropped out of the event, but I don't see him listed whatsoever. Let me just quickly see if he was listed, because I know I did not read off his name at any point during the show. I don't see him listed at all. Oh, Shang. Okay, sorry. You said Jerry. My bad. I misread that. I thought you said Jari. My bad. Yeah, Shang, that makes sense. I mean, look, I like Shang a lot. I think he's a very solid player. But at the end of the day, I think Shang's durability is his biggest flaw at this point. I know that he did win a title, coincidentally beat Musetti in a final. But I do think he's got upside. I question the health. Yeah, I misread Jerry with Jari, so apologies there, because I always just refer to him as Shang. But look, if you want to take a flyer on 28-1, I don't mind that. But I do have my doubts and reservations about his health. So that's kind of why I'm avoiding certain players. And Shang, I love as a player. He's very good. But if there's no guarantee he's going to finish the event in one piece, and there are no refunds for sportsbooks if a guy drops out mid-event, I'm really not interested in taking flyers. Maybe to win a quarter, I'd consider. I don't trust his body enough to stay intact. So I'll pass on Jerry. Apologies, Sashi, there. I thought you said Jari. So apologies there. But Shang, look, if you want to take a flyer, go for it. I'm not going to do it. But 28-1 is not a bad deal if you want to consider it. Let me just see quickly if there is a better price available. I don't think I saw one. So there you go. 28-1. You can take it. I'm not going to, but I'm rooting for you. Anyway, once again, my outright picks for Hong Kong are going to be chalky, but not full chalk. We got Musetti at 3-1. We have Bublik at 550. We did skip Rublev, but we did take Kashanov at 10-1. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the outrights for Brisbane and for Hong Kong. Time to go into the lock and dog picks. Before we get into the lock and dog, a reminder they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Novig. If you like prediction markets, check out Novig, which is rated #1 in America for all sports prediction markets. Check out some great prices, reduced juice on a bunch of different bets. For example, on the Propcast show that I do for the NFL, I ended up giving out Baker Mayfield interception. Every book had -145, but Novig had -125. So you save 20 cents, you picked a nice winner. So there you go. But either way, a reminder, if you want to check out Novig, get access to a great sign-up deal courtesy of us with our partnership with Novig. Download the app, get $50, and you spend just $5. And you get that great deal if you use the code SGPN at sign up. Once again, get the extra Novig promo code SGPN. Spend $5, $50 for free in bonus funds with the promo code SGPN at Novig. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. They've been great this NFL season, especially on props, and you can check them out for Week 18 of the regular season on Sunday. Check them out for college basketball as well. They're up and running with a bunch of predictions, a bunch of model plays. If you want to check out models for sports betting, think you might be able to get a nice introduction courtesy of Rhythm. They'll ease you into it. Couple of ways to use it. You can build your own model, copy one from the leaderboard. So if you are worried about actually trying it from scratch, you can borrow other people's models and try to make money that way, or use the Rhythm House model if you want to just let Rhythm make picks for you. But check it out. Think you'll enjoy the content that Rhythm has. And we also have a great sign-up deal with Rhythm. So if you use the code SGPN25, when you download the app, you'll get a nice 25% off your first month. That's Rhythm, RATHMN, promo code SGPN25 for 25% off your first month. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the outrights for Brisbane and for Hong Kong. Time one into the lock and dog picks. For the lock, bit juicy, but I am going to go for it. It's a rare moment where you can actually fade Kyrgios in a professional tennis match. I'm going to do so. Give me Kovacevic money line at -152. If you want the games, that's -1.5, -120. That's fine. Kovacevic tends to never make it easy, so I think it could go 3 sets, but there is a chance Kyrgios is not healthy. Maybe he quits. We'll see what happens. But Kyrgios has not been healthy for a long time. He's not played an ATP match since March. He's not been fully healthy in about 2-3 years at this point. Now, Kyrgios has played a couple exhibitions, beat Sabalenka and beat Paul in exhibition, but he looked awful from a court movement perspective. If you want to watch the highlights, you can see what I mean. It looked like he was moving in slow motion. There's no burst anymore. and I understand he'll get his first serve back, and he can be a tough guy to break. But you might remember we faded Kyrgios in the Australian Open. We took Fernley against him, and Fernley beat him in straight sets pretty easily. Kyrgios at this point in his career, I think, is washed. And I do understand that he's going to be in Australia. There will be crowd support. But watching him against Sabalenka, I was not impressed. I thought that he looked sluggish. He looked out of breath early in the match. I questioned the conditioning. And I think Kovacevic, who is not exactly a great player by any means, he did make 2 ATP finals last year, so on hard court. So I know that he has the hard court game. He's got firepower. The second serve's not great. Like, I'm aware of it. Kyrgios might be able to find some breaks, but I think that fading Kyrgios, who maybe even retires mid-match, is worth something. So give me Kovacevic money line at -152. It's mainly blindly fading Kyrgios, who I think is totally washed at this point. I think he might retire mid-season. I think he said he was going to at the end of the year. So you're going to fade a guy who's basically towards the final couple of matches in his career. I see value with the young American. Give me Kovacevic money line at -152. If you want the games at -1.5, you can do that as well at -120. But I'm leaving the door open for retirement payment if Kyrgios does end up quitting. So I'll see what happens, but give me the money line for Kovacevic as my lock for the show. For the dog, I mentioned him before in the outright section. I'm going to go back to the Paul match against Perricard. You probably know where I'm going with this one. Give me the first set over 10.5 games at +108. Perricard, we know, is a tiebreak machine because he bomb serves everybody and he can't rally to save his life. So he's going to be an absolute serve bot for a long, long time. He's the biggest serve bot I've seen probably since Karlovic. Opelka can actually hit some shots, and you're looking at like Raonic could actually play a bit. He could volley. Perricard really only has the serve. That's it. And Paul is the opposite, whose serve is not exactly great. It's underrated when it comes to serve speed if he dials it up, but he's more of a rallier. I think he'll be able to extract errors from Perricard. So a decent, I'd say, once again, battle of styles here. But you've seen a bunch of tie breaks early in Perricard matches because nobody can break them. So you've seen 6 of Perricard's last 7 matches have a 7-5 or a 7-6 first set, which is very on brand. Paul, though, Tien last year, had a bunch of long first sets too. 3 of his last 4 matches had a 7-5 or a 7-6. He played an exhibition against Kyrgios. He won in 3 points. We'll see how he looks, but I do think that Paul's rallying should still frustrate Perricard because the unforced error count. But it's a really tough ask in your first ATP match since the U.S. Open to face off against the best server on the entire tour. So I can see a pretty ugly collection of return games early for Paul before he can settle in. And Perricard maybe breaks Paul, which would be annoying. But I think that Paul's rally game and his rally tolerance will just force enough errors and poor shot selection from Perricard, where you end up getting a pretty long first set. And I do think that even though both players have extremely different styles of play, I see it resulting in holds. But I like +108. I think it's a good price. I'll take that as my dog for the show. So once again, the lock and dog picks for the first episode of 2026. We're going to go with Kovacevic money line as the lock at -152. We're going to fade Kyrgios blindly anytime he plays an ATP match. And for the dog, give me Paul and Perricard first set over 10.5 games at +108. That's going to wrap it up for the show. A reminder, we're back once again for the quarterfinals for Brisbane and for Hong Kong. If you're new to the show, welcome. Hopefully you enjoy. Hopefully you stick around for the rest of the year. If you are back, welcome back. Sorry we had to take a bit of a layoff there for the tennis calendar. We were back for the Next Gen Finals, but we had another gap afterwards. So nice to be back for official ATP coverage. Feels good having the actual calendar officially start in 2026. Either way, though, once again, support the show. Like, subscribe on YouTube. Leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. Find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. You can also, once again, check out the merch store if you want some great tennis merchandise. So check that out as well. Till next time, Reichel Radio on Twitter. Good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.